Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Erschen. This week we are ranking the Slasher 6 horror franchises. And that's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Child's Play, Halloween, Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and the Scream franchise, respectively. Now, my previous videos were ranking each film in those franchises, but this time we're ranking the franchises themselves overall as a whole, which is the best franchise of the Slasher 6. And this was a tough one, I gotta say. It's hard to actually pick one above the other, because I love them all. But I gotta be honest with you guys and give my honest thoughts and opinion, because there are some I do like better than others. Now, this was created by Derek's Horror Corner, by the way. He encouraged me to do this video, as he did the previous ranking, the Slasher 6 videos. So he came up with the concept. So guys, check out Derek's Horror Corner. He's got a great channel. And let's get to it, shall we? It really pains me to put this one at the bottom at number 6, because I really love the original so much, and I think it's one of the greatest horror movies ever made. So it's really painful to put this at the bottom, but I gotta put Texas Chainsaw Massacre as a franchise at the bottom. Why? Because the timeline is so messed up in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's just all over the place. And it's very spotty, And there's definitely some clunkers, some real stinkers in there, But I will say that the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a masterpiece. It's one of the greatest horror films of all time, in my opinion. It's absolutely awesome. And I also am a huge fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Some people, it seems, either love it or hate it. But, I'm one of the people that loves it. I've always loved it since the first time I've seen it. I just absolutely love Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. But after that is when it gets spotty, For me, I don't really care for 3. And I certainly don't care for The Next Generation. I liked the remake. I thought it was a solid remake, and the beginning was solid, but then of course you have the crappy Texas Chainsaw 3D. It was absolutely awful, and the Leatherface reboot, which I didn't care for either. So yeah, it's real spotty outside once you get past the first 2 films. So next up is going to be Child's Play, the Child's Play franchise, starring everyone's favorite killer doll, Chucky. So yeah, I have to say, overall, Child's Play is a pretty solid franchise, and the continuity is pretty solid throughout. Each movie pretty much picks up where the last one left off, for the most part. It's definitely a solid franchise overall. The only truly terrible one, in my opinion, is Seed of Chucky. I hate that movie. So, to me, that's really the only clunker, the only real stinker in the bunch. That's Seed of Chucky. I don't really care too much for the recent ones, Cult of Chucky and Curse of Chucky. To me, they do feel like straight-to-video movies. But I wouldn't say they're bad, per se. I just don't really care too much for them, But definitely the original from 1988, the original Child's Play, I really enjoy. I really enjoy Child's Play 2. I know Child's Play 3 gets a lot of crap, but I also really enjoy that one too. And Bride of Chucky is a lot of fun, very funny. And I like the addition of Tiffany and, Jennifer Tilly's character. But yeah, Seed of Chucky is awful. And Curse and Cult are okay, So next up, number 4 is going to be the Scream franchise. You guys might be shocked, like, what? You put Scream over the Child's Play? And I'll tell you why, because I think Scream is a much more important film to the horror genre than Child's Play is. I think Scream is an absolute horror classic, and it pretty much single-handedly brought back the slasher genre from the dead, because at that point all we had were endless sequels to horror franchises that kind of had lost their way, you know. And we just kept pumping them out. But Scream just totally revitalized the genre and brought it back in a brilliant way, and I thought it was just awesome. I think it's an excellent movie. It's got some great satire, some great humor, and some great horror. And I think it's got probably the best opening in horror history, at least one of the best opening sequences in horror history, with Drew Barrymore there. And I will say Scream 2 was a really good follow-up as well. It still maintained the horror, and I really enjoyed it. It's very solid. It brings back most of the cast, the key members of the cast, you know, Courtney Cox, David Arquette, Neve Campbell, all come back, and it's really good, you know. It's very well done. And I actually like the killer in the movie, you know. I won't say who it is, I'm not going to spoil it, but, you know, I really like how they did that as well. Scream 3 is a little, you know, went a little too far with the comedy elements, you know. It became almost a straight-up comedy, you know. There's not enough horror in it for me, you know. That's why I didn't care for it as much. But Scream 4, I felt, kind of came back with pretty solid, you know. I enjoyed Scream 4. It's certainly not as good as the first two, but I definitely enjoy it. It was a good comeback, and it was kind of a good swan song for Wes Craven and the Scream franchise. Next up is going to be one that is near and dear to me. Now, from here on, I absolutely love these franchises and hold them very near and dear to my heart. And the next one is going to be A Nightmare on Elm Street. I love this franchise, and there's just several movies in this franchise that I absolutely love. Obviously, the original is just a given. I feel like the original is, one of the greatest horror movies of all time. It's a masterpiece. I absolutely love everything about the original film. I love Nancy Thompson's character, you know. I love Freddy Krueger. It's such a great introduction to Freddy Krueger. I love Wes Craven's brilliant direction, and I just love the whole concept of it. And I do feel like Nightmare on Elm Street 2 was a good follow-up. I do enjoy it. I know a lot of people hate that one, but there's a lot of good stuff in there. Yes, there are some bad scenes, too. There are some cringe-worthy scenes, I'm not going to lie. But I feel like it was solid overall. There's a lot of good stuff in there. I loved Part 3, Dream Warriors. I think everybody loves Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, and rightfully so. It's an absolutely fantastic sequel, bringing back Heather Langenkamp to the role of Nancy Thompson, as well as John Saxon. Just an awesome concept of the Dream Warriors, you know, people finding their own powers in their dream and getting together as a group to take on the Madman Freddy Krueger. I absolutely love it. And I also really like 4, the Dream Master, a lot. There's a lot of great dream sequences in there. I liked Freddy in the film. It was dark, and I love Alice's character, played by Lisa Wilcox. I feel like Nightmare on Elm Street 4 is underrated. But then you have 5, which is just straight up terrible in my opinion. 5 and 6 together are just garbage. I don't like him at all. And then New Nightmare came back, and it was okay. It was pretty solid, but I don't care too much for it either, because it's really slow-paced. And that's probably why I have to put Nightmare on Elm Street at number 3. So next up is going to be another one that I absolutely love, which is a great franchise, and that is Friday the 13th. Yeah! Now, I'm one of the people that does put the original Friday 13th on top from 1980. Such a classic. To me, Friday 13th is a horror classic, not just a slasher classic. I feel like it's just a worthy contender for a horror classic, you know. I love Betsy Palmer's character, Pamela Voorhees. I love the whole lore, the whole history of Jason Voorhees being presented. You know, Jason Voorhees, the whole story where he drowned as a child and his mother, you know, while the camp counselors weren't paying any attention, you know, and now she's back for revenge against anyone who dare step foot at the grounds of Camp Crystal Lake. Just brilliant. I love the original, and of course I love Part 2, Friday the 13th. Part 2 is one of the greatest horror sequels ever made. It's just amazing. I love it. Love every minute of it. I love the old sackhead Jason look. I feel like Friday the 13th 2 was amazing. You had one of the greatest final girls in Ginny. Yeah, and the whole franchise is great. You know, I shouldn't say the whole franchise is great. There are definitely some bad ones. But I feel like the good definitely outweighs the bad, because you had the final chapter, which is great. We have Jason and Liz, which is great. And those are just fantastic movies that I can just watch over and over. I even love Part 5. Part 5, A New Beginning, has really grown on me over the years. I actually really enjoy that one. But then you have, you know, Jason Takes Manhattan, which was bad. You had The New Blood, which is okay. Then you have Jason X, which is terrible. Jason Goes to Hell is terrible. But luckily they came back with Freddy vs. Jason, which was great. With that being said, let's get to number 1, the greatest horror franchise of the Slasher 6. And you know it's going to be Halloween. The Halloween franchise, baby. My favorite of all time, as Halloween is my favorite horror film of all time. And guess what's my favorite horror sequel of all time? Halloween 2 from 1981. So yeah, that alone to me makes it the best franchise ever. Because you have the strength, the awesome power, the awesome might of the first 2 films. But then of course you got some other great sequels like Halloween 4, and yes, Halloween 5. I do enjoy Halloween 5. I'm not one of these Halloween 5 haters. You know, I get why people don't like it, but I do like it. And Halloween 6 has grown on me over the years. I have come to enjoy that film. And then you had Halloween 2018, which is very solid. And that was a great return to form. And of course you had Halloween H2O, which was solid, saw the return of Laurie Strode. Just an amazing franchise. I love the characters. Especially that first movie is just incredibly iconic. I feel like every scene is iconic, you know. The direction of John Carpenter is just absolutely brilliant. I love Donald Pleasance in the role of Dr. Loomis is just incredible. I love Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode. I love all the characters in that original film, which a lot of them did return in the sequel, Halloween 2, which is one of the reasons why I love Halloween 2 so much. You got the return of Laurie Strode, the return of Dr. Loomis, the return of Sheriff Lee Brackett, the return of... you even had Nurse Marion Chambers coming back, played by Nancy Stevens. So it had great continuity from the original. Actually, it picks up exactly from the original. The second after, the moment after the original is where Halloween 2 picks up. That's one of the reasons why it's just so great, in my opinion. Not only that, it's just got great tension and suspense, and a terrifying Michael Myers as played by Dick Warlock. Just an awesome franchise, and it's got such a great history, and it's still going to this day, you know, which is amazing. Film from 1978, and the franchise is still going today in 2019. Alright guys, that's it for ranking the Slasher 6 horror franchises. So thank you to Derek's Horror Corner for coming up with this concept. I had such a blast doing this, and it was great to have one last video, and I thank you so much guys for watching, and thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Erschen, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared.